I've always considered myself independent, the kind of person who enjoys their own company more than anything. So when my parents announced a 2-week vacation abroad, leaving me alone at home, I was thrilled. The idea of having the entire place to myself, free from any nagging or rules, was my idea of heaven. Little did I know, it would soon turn into my worst nightmare. The first few days went by without a hitch. I stayed up late, watched movies, and ate whatever I felt like. It was freedom in its purest form. But by the 4th night, the excitement began to wane, replaced by an eerie sense of loneliness I hadn't anticipated. The house felt bigger, emptier. That night, as I lay in bed trying to fall asleep, I heard it for the first time. A faint scratching sound, coming from the ceiling above. Rats, I thought, annoyed but not overly concerned. The next day, I set a few traps in the attic and went about my day, dismissing the incident from my mind. However, the noises continued, growing more diverse and disturbing. Scratching was joined by soft thumps, like footsteps pacing back and forth. I tried to convince myself it was just the house settling or some kind of animal. But a deep, unsettling feeling told me it wasn't that simple. About a week after my parents left, the real terror began. I woke up in the middle of the night to a cold breeze. I found the window next to my bed wide open. I was sure I hadn't opened it. I never did at night because it made the room too cold. I got up, closed it, and tried to go back to sleep, telling myself I must have forgotten. The next night, the same thing happened. This time, I was certain I hadn't opened the window. Fear crept into my heart, the kind that makes your skin crawl and your throat tighten. Was someone coming into my room at night? I decided to stay up, hidden in my bed with the lights off, pretending to sleep while keeping a watchful eye on the window. Hours passed, and just as I began to think I was scaring myself over nothing, I heard it. The faint sound of the back door downstairs gently closing. My heart stopped. Someone was in the house. I didn't dare move. I listened as footsteps ascended the stairs, slow and deliberate. They paused outside my door, and I held my breath, praying they would move on. After what felt like an eternity, the footsteps receded, and I was left in silence once more. The next morning, with daylight restoring a fraction of my courage, I inspected the house. All the doors and windows were locked from the inside, and nothing seemed out of place. I couldn't make sense of it. Had I imagined it all? The following night, I decided to confront my fear. I stayed up, lights on, waiting, but nothing happened. No sounds, no mysterious footsteps. Relief washed over me, and I began to relax, thinking it had all been a product of my overactive imagination. But then, on the final night before my parents were due to return, the unimaginable happened. I woke up to find a note on my bedside table, a note that hadn't been there when I went to sleep. In uneven, scrawling handwriting, it read, "I've enjoyed your company." Nothing was stolen, and there was no sign of forced entry. The police found no evidence of anyone having been in the house. But I knew it was real. Someone had been living in my home, unseen, moving silently through the spaces I thought were mine alone.
One fateful incident occurred when I was barely 19. A young, naive girl, navigating the trials of a broken family. My parents had divorced, and I was living with my dad. He was a hard-working man, often returning late from work, which meant I usually had to tuck myself in bed. Our neighborhood was known for its quiet allure, a seemingly safe haven where such chilling incidents were unheard of. Sounds almost idyllic, doesn't it? But here begins the ordeal. That evening, like any normal weekday, I lounged around in my home comfort, savoring a delicious pizza while mindlessly scrolling through YouTube videos. Along with chatting with my friends on Messenger, these simple indulgences were my antidote to loneliness. As the day wore on, I started feeling the weight of the impending slumber. I gave in and slowly walked to my room, crawling under my sheets before surrendering to the sweet abyss of sleep. In what seemed like the middle of the night, I was rudely awakened by peculiar sounds. It sounded like someone shuffling around just outside my door, nudging furniture and various objects crudely. I hastily concluded it must be Dad. But there was a nagging feeling at the back of my mind. My dad had always been considerate about not making a racket. He was like a cat on a prowl whenever I was asleep, moving carefully so as to not disturb me. Fully awake now, but not willing to leave the warmth of my bed, I called out to my dad, hoping to learn what had kept him busy at this odd hour. The eerie noises abruptly ceased, replaced by the faint echo of cushioned footsteps approaching towards my room. A chill ran down my spine as the door groaned open, revealing a faint silhouette standing idly on the threshold. "Dad, why are you making so much noise? Is everything all right?" The silhouette remained silent, frozen on the spot. The oppressive silence stretched infinitely, and a wave of overwhelming dread washed over me. Piercing through this silence, I heard an unfamiliar voice just outside my room.
"What's going on, John?"
My heart stopped. It felt like the floor beneath my bed had given way. My drowsiness had evaporated instantly, replaced by sheer horror. There were intruders in our house. Panicked, I saw the shadow inching towards me, and I let out an earth-shattering scream before making a run towards the window. As I was fleeing, I felt a sudden grasp gripping my arm. I mustered all my strength and broke free. Garbed in just my nightgown, with bare feet scraping the cold, hardened asphalt, I sprinted recklessly towards my nearest neighbour's house. All the while my mind was whirring. I should have called the police. But in the chaos, I had left my phone back at home. On reaching the neighbour's house, I pounded frantically on their door, startling them awake. A concerned neighbour immediately took me in, offering me a blanket while dialing the emergency number for the police and my father. No sooner did the police arrive did they commence their investigation at our house. It was empty, except for the disarray left by the thieves. My father arrived shortly after, his face a mixture of relief and distress on seeing me safe, but shaken. Post-investigation, it turned out that while I was peacefully asleep, 2 audacious robbers had picked our lock and prowled into our home, slipping under the radar of the unsuspecting neighbours. Unaware of my presence, they assumed the house to be unoccupied. With a nightmarish memory like this, my father wasted no time, strengthened our home security, and got a state-of-the-art alarm system installed. As for me, every nightfall triggered the night's haunting memories. I now look out for Dad's return every night before drifting off to sleep. After all, I had narrowly escaped what could have been a horrific plight. I always thought living in a small, quiet town was boring. Nothing ever happened here, and everyone knew each other, which meant no secrets and no surprises. Or so I thought. This belief shattered one evening in a way I could never have predicted, changing my view of my sleepy town forever. It was a typical Thursday evening, and I was home alone. My parents were at a social gathering, and my younger brother was at a sleepover. I had the house to myself, and I relished in the solitude, planning to catch up on some reading and maybe watch a movie or two. The evening began uneventfully. I made myself some dinner, settled down with a book, and enjoyed the peace and quiet. That tranquility, however, was short-lived. Around 9 p.m, the phone rang. Expecting it to be my parents checking in, I answered without hesitation. But instead of the familiar voices of my mom or dad, there was silence on the other end. After a moment, I hung up, figuring it was just a wrong number or a dropped call. But then the phone rang again. And again, silence greeted me when I answered. This time though, just as I was about to hang up, I heard something, a faint whisper, almost inaudible, saying my name. A chill ran down my spine. It was probably just a prank call, I reasoned, trying to calm my racing heart. The calls continued throughout the evening, each time with that same whisper, growing increasingly louder, more insistent. I stopped answering after the fourth call, too unnerved by the situation. I tried to distract myself with a movie, but the sense of unease was impossible to shake off. Then came the knock at the door. It was well past midnight by then, and every rational thought told me not to answer it. But curiosity, mixed with a foolish sense of bravado, pushed me to check through the peephole. There was nobody there. As I turned away, the knocking started again, louder this time, desperate. I checked again, and still no one was there. That's when panic truly set in. I called my parents, trying to keep my voice steady as I explained what was happening. They told me it was probably just someone messing with me, but they'd come home right away. After hanging up, I felt slightly better, but the sense of being watched, of not being alone, was overwhelming. I decided to turn all the lights on, thinking it would make me feel safer. As I moved from room to room, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. And then I saw it, my bedroom window, wide open, the curtains fluttering in the gentle night breeze. I never opened that window, ever. I didn't know what to do. The fear was paralyzing. I retreated to the living room, locking every door behind me, and waited for my parents with the phone clutched tightly in my hand. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow seemed to move. When my parents finally arrived, they found me huddled on the couch, the house ablaze with light. They checked every inch of the property but found no signs of forced entry, no footprints, nothing to indicate someone had been there. The police were called, but their investigation turned up nothing. The calls, the whispers, the knocking, and the open window remained unexplained mysteries.